building was we used integrated PVs at the top of the building. The top of the building is domed. It's domed in order to improve the acceleration of the building at the top. As the wind passes over a super tall building, it creates vortices on the leeward side, and that kind of snaps the building back and forth. And as that happens, and the wind gets organized, it begins to rock the building back and forth. What you're trying to do is essentially balance that. And one way to do it is just use more steel or more concrete. The other way to do that is to design the building properly, form it properly, and have the building actually perform better. So when we do this, we can actually cut the behavior by about 30%. We can reduce the negative pressure on the backside by about 30%. And what you don't see are all the redundant details that go into the exterior wall to hold that wall onto the building. And you're losing a lot of that redundancy in the details and cutting your embedded carbon into the building. The PVs at the top of this building help shade the upper space, which is an open space. You can see at the top. And there's a double skin at the very top. And that double skin is really an exhaust or a release for the warm air that gathers at the top of the building. There's a turbine farm up there that, as the wind pulls through, that farm then generates power. And the photovoltaics are also generating power and shading that space. This negative pressure is exhausting that space. And what you get at the top of your building is, instead of a mechanical roof with cooling towers or something like that, you get a great space for the users of the building that then can enjoy the views and the panorama of the city. This detail actually comes from a Land Rover. If you look at a Land Rover from 1960s, and I know because my grandfather has one now, they didn't have air conditioning in the Land Rover. What they did was they created a bubble roof, just like that. And as you drove, that suction through that little cavity in the roof pulled the warm air out of the cab. And we were in the Caribbean at the time, so it used to be hot. And it would exhaust that warm air out the back. And it looked like a charm. And these are the kind of things that you go back and realize that are passive systems that go into design that really make a difference. That's what the view of the top of the building looks like. And as I said, this was a prototype for us. So we shaped the body of the building, again, to have wind movement around the corners. And this is very different than what we did on Pro River. On Pro River, we took the wind right through the body of the building. In this building, it goes around the corners. And it goes around the corners because we're in a context that's full of buildings around us. So the movement of the building at any given time is unpredictable. And we use vertical axis turbines in these areas, and that's what the torso began to look like. And then the body of the exterior wall ended up looking like that. The deformation in the skin really helps move wind around the corners, up and down the body, and funnels it through those turbines on the corners. And the turbines we used were vertical axis, as I mentioned. They're a carbon fiber turbine. They're designed to function in multiple directions, as opposed to a propeller turbine. The propeller turbines are more efficient given a straight head on wind. So when you look out in the fields and you see those large propellers, they work really well as long as the angle of incidence to the propeller isn't more than 15 or 20 degrees. At 40 degrees, it actually torques the propeller, tears it off from its stem, and you'll find, arms of the propeller 150 meters away, stuck in the farm somewhere. And we know this because we work with the guys who actually run these farms. There's a company in Chicago that owns about 13,000 acres of fields. They work with GE very closely. So we begin to learn all the issues surrounding these designs. The vertical axis turbine generates less power, but it works more often. So because it's working more often, you actually are getting more energy out of the turbine than you would with a propeller. And that's a detail of the fuselage, as we call it. The exterior wall in this building is a double skin. Works great in climates like Chicago, where it's cold in the winter, warm in the summer. And what we tried here was a thermos model concept. Again, this is nothing new. There's a building in Buffalo that was designed like this in 1967 or so. The difference is that they had a cavity that went all the way around the building, completely open envelope, all the way around the building, but they didn't have any fans in there that generated the air and moved it around like a furnace. So that's what we tried here. What we basically did was put it in two skins that allowed, obviously, the sun to warm the particles on the south side, activate the photovoltaic fans on the corners, and drive the wind around and basically create a thermos concept that balances the temperature of that cavity, keeping it cooler or warmer or in stabilization so that you don't have really warm surfaces on the south side and cool surfaces on the north side. Air conditioning in buildings will absolutely kill you. It is probably one of the biggest offenders of energy use. And so you'll always hear comfort issues in buildings as a real problem with users. People that sit against the window complain about it being too hot or too cold. People that sit against the floors are complaining about, it's too dark or it's too cool. And so that comfort is the kind of number one problem with developers and their users. So balancing the surface of the space is really important. Things like radiant slabs come a long way in helping you put an even kind of temperature in your buildings.